It's time!
What's kicking, everybody? We are back for another episode of Pickin' Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by Tom. Tom, how are you tonight, bro?
Well, I'm just sad that the good people at home are gonna miss the epic intro that I did before we had to cut the video and restart. So, maybe in another life we could have recorded, saved that one. Maybe I can pop it over and have it play over here. Sadly, if you're seeing this one, that means I couldn't do it. So I'm doing great though. There's a great card this week. There was a great card last week, great card the week before. We've been running a hot streak, knock on wood. So I'm excited to pick these fights. And how you doing, Keith? How the cops over there?
The what? I didn't hear that. Never mind. So yeah, I'm super excited about this one. Like you mentioned, a bit of a streak on both ends. We're just being consistent. Consistency is key. And hopefully you good people at home that like, subscribe, comment down below. You keep coming back because of how consistent we are, and following our Twitters and our Instagrams @_pickinwinners. Check all that stuff out because we're consistent and we're good and we're fine at this. So now we have UFC London, right? That's UFC Fight Night. Volkov versus Aspinall, I guess, is the official title for this one. But this is the big, highly touted London card that everybody's been asking for at the O2 Arena for feels like a year at least. But this is super exciting. All you English UFC fans over there in the UK are finally getting everything that you asked for. So we're gonna start, as we always do, by our prelim locks. And I've got a couple, but I'll start with just one. I've got Muhammad Mokaev winning over Cody Durden, and I've got him most likely winning by submission, and I'll get into why. But this is his UFC debut to open the prelims, and the entire MMA world, MMA Twitter, everybody has been pretty hot on him. Ariel Helwani is hot on him, and he's pretty good at sniffing out who the young hot, well, that almost came out funny, the young hot guys, but who the young hot prospects are. Everybody's hot on this kid. He's got incredible ground game, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and he's got great cardio too. And he's got a 10-year age advantage, so to speak. He's almost 10 years younger than Cody Durden, and he's entirely undefeated as a pro mixed martial artist. So I'm rolling with Muhammad Mokaev for my first one. Probably take him straight in a parlay. His odds right now, I'm seeing some -340, so he's a slightly heavy favorite. But I'm excited to see what those submission lines look like. Tom, what do you got for prelim locks?
Yeah, this might surprise a few people at home, but I'm really going with Mike Grundy to beat Makwan Amirkhani here. And the reason for that is these are guys who have basically very, very similar styles. And I think Mike Grundy is better than Makwan Amirkhani is when it comes to grappling. I don't know why, but I think of Makwan Amirkhani. Oh my God, how many times can I say his name in a single bit? I think Makwan Amirkhani, I think of as a younger fighter, but you're looking at it, he's 33 years old to Mike Grundy's 35 years old. I really think that Mike Grundy is going to be able to look for the takedown, get the takedown, and he's going to be able to put, grounded pound on. I don't think he's going to finish Makwan Amirkhani, but I think he's going to lay grounded pound. And I don't think Makwan's going to have the ability to continually get up time and time again. If he can keep it on the feet, I think Makwan does have the advantage, but ultimately I just see Mike Grundy coming in here, shooting for the takedown, eventually getting it, even if he has to shoot crazy abundance. I mean, I think his takedown percentage is not very high. But even so, I think he's going to be diving at the legs of Makwan Amirkhani. I think he's better in that area. And for those reasons, I think he's definitely going to take this win.
Yeah, that's a good pick. So for my next one, I've got Jack Shore winning over Timur Valiev. And Jack Shore is actually coming into this one as a +140 underdog opening line, but I see him as a high value underdog here. He's got the ability to get into some really nice control positions, whether it be on the ground or against the cage, and just really dominate the fight. He's done it. He's won 3-round fights just purely dominating, using that nice grapple game that he has. But he's got an incredible pace. That's the thing that really stands out to me the most. And I have a feeling he's going to tire out Timur Valiev with just takedown after takedown. And he's also got another youth advantage over Timur Valiev. He's another guy that's entirely undefeated at 15-0 as a professional. And he's 5'7" with a 67-inch reach, he's 5'8" with a 71-inch reach. Different websites have different things, but I'm referring to Tapology now. And so they have 5'8", 71-inch reach. That is just, he's got arms hanging down to his kneecaps basically. But that really stands out to me about Jack Shore, and I look forward to seeing him just tire out Timur Valiev. +140, high value underdog. I'm rolling with him here. You got another one?
Yeah, I'm going with Sergey Pavlovich over Shamil Abdurakhimov. This is one that I'm going to go with ending quickly. I think if you could take Sergey Pavlovich, sprinkle him in the first and the second round. I think those are your best shots for this one. I don't think this one is going to a decision. I don't see either of these guys ending by points and by a judge. Ultimately, it comes down to the fact that these two guys are strikers in the purest form. I mean, they do have moderate grappling ability, if you can call it that. But these guys, they want to go out there and they want to stand, they want to fight. They want to stand and bang. And I think at this point in their careers, Sergey Pavlovich, coming in at 29 years old, is entering his prime, coming off of 2 wins over Marcelo Gom and Maurice Green, both by finish. And you have Shamil Abdurakhimov, who is 40 and 1/2 years old, giving up 8 inches to the younger guy and coming off of 2 losses, 2 KO losses, one to Chris Dawkins, which was a nasty right cross to ground strikes, like you were talking about, Keith, in the pre-show meetings. And then you have Curtis Blades by a similar method, a ground and pound. Now he's taking a lot of time off in between those, but when you're old, sometimes activity is good if you can avoid damage. If you're taking a lot of damage, you have to take a lot of time off. And then what does that do to your overall body and your ability to take a shot moving forward? And naturally, your body's going to age at a really rapid rate the older you get, at least as it pertains to sports. For all of those reasons, I'm really nervous about Shamil Abdurakhimov coming in here against a on-fire prospect in Sergey Pavlovich. So for those reasons, I'm taking Sergey Pavlovich, take him in the first, take him in the second. I think one of those two is what we're going to end up seeing on Saturday afternoon for us in the United States.
Yes, that's important to note. I think we were talking about this before. All the British fans are always staying up until, 3, 4 in the morning, their time, to watch cards that are, 10 o'clock on our time. And, you were saying this before, a lot of them are online like, wow, now you have to stay up late. But guess what? We're having a card at their nighttime and it's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon for us. So lucky us, some nice Saturday afternoon sports right in the heat of March when sports really get great. So I've got one more, and not really a lock, so to speak, but just somebody to sprinkle a little bit on and keep an eye on. We've got Nikita Krylov going up against Paul the Bear Jew Craig. And Paul Craig is a plus 145, just a slight underdog going into this one. He's somebody that I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on his money line because, he really is a bear when it comes to grappling. We saw what he did to Jamal Hill, who is now, really up there in the light heavyweight division. Yanked his arm right out of the socket, basically. But this is going to be a good fight, because of his grappling ability, and he is really good standing as well. He's 5-0 over his last 5, I believe. And Nikita Krylov is, he's fought some of the best in the division. He came to a close split decision, I believe, with Glover Teixeira. He was submitted by Jan Blachowicz. But this is definitely a fight to watch. The safest pick in this one, I believe, is the fight not to go the distance because of the ability of these two men. And another thing to look out for is Nikita Krylov is Ukrainian. So, being everything going on over there, your country's in a war, you're probably going to want to come out swinging. So I like Paul Craig in that one, and I also like the fight to not go the distance. So do you have any more prelim locks for us? No? All right, then we'll jump into the main card. We're starting off with Jai Herbert versus Ilya Taporia. And, I like Ilya Taporia. He's a guy, I've kept an eye on him for quite some time, but Ilya Taporia is stepping up a weight class against Jai Herbert. And Jai Herbert's actually pretty small. 2 weight classes? Wow, 2 weight classes. Okay. 2 weight classes to fight Jai Herbert. That actually makes me a little bit more nervous about this one, but Jai Herbert is small for a lightweight. And I have a feeling, going into this one that, Ilya Taporia, it's not like he's cutting a ton of weight. He's not cutting any weight at all, probably. So, we don't really have to worry too much about cardio, chin, things like that with him. Whereas on the flip side, Jai Herbert does have a notoriously weak chin. I also think that Ilya Taporia has a pretty significant grappling advantage in this one. He's 11-0 throughout his career. He's also a minus 380 favorite in this one walking into this fight. So I'm rolling with Ilya Taporia here. I don't really think that Jai Herbert has, as much of a chance, but it is definitely closer than a minus 380 to plus 300 line would indicate. But Ilya Taporia is my pick for this one. What do you got, Tom?
Yeah, this one is a real tough one because I really like Ilya Taporia, but I don't know how he's going to do up a weight class here on short notice. And then here's the other thing. He just recently got into a fight with Paddy Pimlet, at the fighters meetings or wherever they're at. And that really concerns me because as a fighter, if you're concentrating or maybe not even concentrating, but picking a fight and putting any mental bandwidth towards someone else, let alone a guy in your weight class who it's like, okay, so he's probably thinking about a fight with him, potentially build that, that's in the back of every fighter's mind, right? I don't, so I'm just concerned when a fighter is picking fights with other guys in his weight class the week of the fight, especially when he is a big favorite. He is going up a weight class or two, but he's the all-around more skillful fighter. So this has all of the makings, all of the ingredients for, an upset suit. So for that reason, I'm going with Jai Herbert.
Yeah, I didn't even see that. Wow, look at you with the live updates, getting into a fight with Paddy Pimblett. That is interesting. You always see these fighters that look ahead at somebody else and they end up losing the fight that they're supposed to be in. So that definitely sways me a little bit. I'm still going to roll with Ilya Taporia, but this really does have all the makings of an upset. You're 100% correct about that. So move on up to the next one. We've got Molly McCann versus Luana Carolina. And this is actually the one where I think that an upset is more likely to happen. It's not as disparaging of lines in this one, so it's not going to be a crazy upset, but Molly McCann's walking into this one at -120 and Luana Carolina's +100. But then you look at these two women, like Luana Carolina is actually the bigger fighter. She's pretty big for this weight class, and she has the ability to stuff takedowns. She did it a lot against, who was it? I believe it was Lupita Godinez. She stuffed a lot of those takedowns. And, Meatball McCann really relies on her grappling a lot, star power, and she's a little bit more recognizable. She's one of the scousers coming up with Paddy Pimblett at the moment. So, I just think that's, public perception is really on her side, but I'm definitely leaning towards the underdog money with Luana Carolina in this one. Size advantage, stuff and takedowns, all that good stuff. So what do you think about that one, Tom?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And Tapology would have you believe that Molly McCann is going to go out there on pure emotion and dedication and heart alone, beat Luana Carolina. And, at this level of the women's flyweight division, I think that is, a possibility. She is, excuse to Liverpool, coming up with Paddy Pimlet, training together. You got to imagine how much they imagined and fought for this. And, sometimes that can go the opposite way. And it doesn't fuel you. It goes, against you. Look at Derek Lewis fighting in Houston. And I agree with you. I think Luana Carolina is I guess underrated in this sense for stopping takedowns. I think she'll be able to, at least for the beginning few rounds, hold off Molly McCann to where Molly has to play catch up. And I don't think that that's a game that she is well versed in playing. I think she is someone who's going to go out there, and when she wins, she's going to win a decision. Especially looking, 3 of her last 5 fights, her 3 wins came from decision. So I think if you have to put her in a position to where she has to play catch up, I think it's going to be a tough time out. And I think Luana Carolina, Molly McCann has the potential to come out with more energy, and Luana Carolina has to just fight her off and ultimately potentially draining Molly's gas tank. Or Luana Carolina comes out there to take Molly a little bit to get going. Luana Carolina, when she's fresh, is able to stop takedowns. Either way, I think Luana Carolina is going to take this one.
Yeah, I'm glad we're in agreement for that. And you're right. That was a really good point about Derek Lewis. The pressure of fighting in Houston. There's definitely going to be pressure on some of these UK fighters, fighting on the home turf. So next up, we've got Gunnar Nelson versus Takashi Sato. And this is a little bit tougher for me to pick somebody to win straight up. So I'm going to give you my favorite pick for this one is the fight to not go the distance. And that's because Gunnar Nelson has, really good ground game. He's got some good Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He has wins by submission, but he does have a really weak chin, and he's been dropped by a lot of guys before. And there's a chance that Takashi Sato could sleep him early, definitely drop him early. But on the flip side, Gunnar Nelson has dropped. He has been dropped, and he's bounced back. And he has losses by decision to guys like Leon Edwards and Gilbert Burns. So he's definitely fought like some of the better guys in the division. Those losses have aged really well. The safe pick is no distance, like I said. But I'm going with Gunnar Nelson here. But I do think that a sneaky good pick would be Takashi Sato by knockout. So rolling with Gunnar, fight to not go the distance, but that's my sneaky pick. What do you got?
Now looking at the odds, what do you think they are right now?
Well, I'd say probably -300 Gunnar Nelson. But
I see -450.
Yeah, that's crazy. So that's another potential upset there with Takashi Sato.
I don't think that upset's going to happen. I think Gunnar Nelson is going to win this fight. I think Takashi Sato kind of has the weaknesses where Gunnar can exploit them. And a lot of people forget Gunnar, he has 2 losses, right? But those are a split decision, which, Leon Edwards did probably really should have won a unanimous decision, right? But Leon Edwards, I think a lot of people can agree, is at the top of the division. Then, he fights Gilbert Burns, granted at the time, unranked Gilbert Burns 2 years ago, but, still Gilbert Burns, he's a killer. And he was able to trade with him. And most importantly, they went back and forth on the ground together too. So it wasn't in any way a one-sided matchup. And I think Gunnar Nelson's really interesting kick. It's a karate style, but he doesn't utilize his legs that much. And for a guy who is predominantly a ground specialist, submission guy, it's really interesting to see him come out there with that karate style, have the long Stephen Thompson stance, but then not utilize it in the way that we're used to seeing with that stance with the high kicks and the question mark kicks and things of that nature. That being said, I think Takashi Sato would be kind of, I think he wants to stand. He wants to stand this fight, and he wants to fight Gunnar Nelson. But, guys who are relatively the same size, I'm concerned that Gunnar's going to be able to use the karate stance to stay away from Takashi Sato, or actually the thing about the heavy front leg is that you can be explosive off of it, right? That's why boxers have it. So when Gunnar Nelson has the heavy front leg, yeah, it's kickable by Takashi Sato, but it's also right there to where he can pop Takashi really quickly, or him standing in one spot and not bouncing around as much makes him appear closer than other people would think. So it kind of throws off the depth perception. So I think you could see Takashi Sato maybe have a little bit of an issue finding the range because Gunnar Nelson's standing there kind of opposite to what people normally expect. Now, it's going to be really difficult to predict what Gunnar Nelson's going to do because he's been out of the cage for 2.5 years. He is 33 years old. So he's kind of at the end of what the traditional prime would be. All that suffice to say, I think Takashi Sato isn't going to have the opportunity to knock out Gunnar Nelson if, people with the likes of Leon Edwards and Gilbert Burns weren't able to. I think the years off, any chin issues would potentially help him as far as that goes. You have to imagine he's, hasn't been hurt for all of that long. So he's been in the gym, he's been training, or at least you can take that for granted, or you would hope that he had been. And if that is the case, he's going to be hit around a little bit. So I think that he's going to be used to having, maybe not total ring rust situation. I think people are getting a lot better at managing the time off, especially coming out of COVID. I think Gunnar Nelson, and especially these grappling guys, they can go 100% all the time throughout training. So you have a lot less of a rust situation with them. It's the striking where it's problematic. But I think when you're Gunnar Nelson and you're that experienced on the ground, you can have a little bit of focus to offensive, or should I say defensive striking. All of that's to say, I think Gunnar Nelson's going to take this one on the ground. I think it's going to be a submission. And I would go with Gunnar Nelson second round.
Wow, sounds logic, really great. And one thing that I did just notice looking back at Takashi Sato's fight history is he does have a loss by rear naked choke to Bilal Muhammad. If you're going to lose to Bilal Muhammad by submission, especially a guy who over his past couple of fights, and Bilal has just been laying all over guys, not really trying to use those submissions, I feel like Gunnar Nelson is really just going to be able to get it done, probably by some form of choke as well. Really great pick there. Scratch that Takashi Sato, but I'm going to sprinkle still just the slightest bit, just because it is MMA and anything could happen, and I'm going to stick by what I said the first time. But yeah, Gunnar Nelson by sub and the fight not to go the distance are definitely the two best picks here. So next we've got Paddy Pimblett versus Rodrigo Vargas. And is anybody out there not going with Paddy Pimblett in this one? Paddy Pimblett is the better all-around fighter. He's the Scouser. He's that guy. He really does kind of look like the truth. He got dropped in his last fight almost by, who was that he fought last? Luigi Van
Ramini.
Yes, he definitely got rocked in that one. But, he ended up winning with a couple of hooks, ultimately winning by KO. I think that in this one, it's going to be very similar to like a Terrence McKinney trajectory where, he, at least before he fought Drew Dober, where it's like this guy can do anything. I can't even call a method out for how I think the Paddy Pimblett is going to do it, but I'll tell you what the people at Tapology think. They have majority of them coming in by submission because Paddy Pimblett is so good at jiu-jitsu, and he racked up a lot of submission wins in his career. But I can't really say much else about this one except that Paddy Pimblett is really that guy. I think that he's potentially the future of or at least a hot contender in the lightweight division going forward. So I'm rolling with Paddy Pimblett here, -410. Heavy favorite. I'm sure those lines are moving even more, but I don't think there's a single person out there that's not going to go with Paddy Pimblett. So, unless you surprise me right now, Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going with Rodrigo. No, Paddy Pimblett, I think is going to win this, and you could tell that because the UFC is putting Paddy Pimblett, who is 27 years old with a decorated background and a Barstool sponsorship, up against a 36-year-old guy who is less than a contender, to put it frankly but honestly. Who do you think the UFC has a vested interest in seeing win? And who do you think they wouldn't pair him up against? Someone who I'm not saying the UFC is rigged, but just like boxing, when you pair people up for, specific reasons, to sometimes it's to see who's the better guy, right? But that usually comes later on. You want to build a guy up. You want to make him have a fan base so that when they do that matchup gets the most amount of money. And the most amount of money Paddy Pimblett is going to make is not going to be against Rodrigo Vargas, right? And they're not going to make it with him taking a loss here. So they're not going to risk it. So they're going to match him up against a guy who they know that Paddy's better than on the feet, on the ground, anywhere it takes place, but has a good enough record and has a good enough, stylistic matchup to where it technically does look like a step up. So good for the UFC. I think Paddy Pimblett is a heavy favorite, rightfully so, because circumstances matter, just like styles make fights. And I'm going to go with Paddy. I'm going to go with Paddy by, people at Tapology have it split, of the 93% of the 1,300 people picking Paddy Pimblett to win. It's 33% by TKO, and 47% by submission. So we're looking at, 50, 80%, seemingly think this is going to end in a finish. So I think Paddy Pimblett by finish, and probably Paddy Pimblett finish in the first round, or the second round is probably your best bet.
All right. Yeah, absolutely agree. Definitely a boxing scenario. Put him up against McCann to start him off. So next up, we've got the co-main event, and that is Arnold Allen versus Dan Hooker. This is one that I'm really, really torn about emotionally. I feel really awful about what I'm about to do. But Arnold Allen is on one of the sneakiest, I believe it's a 9-fight win streak in like the history of fighting. It's almost gone unsaid by a lot of people. And I just, being that these lines are so close, it's also really tough for that reason. He's minus 105 as opposed to Dan Hooker's minus 115. But I don't think that Dan Hooker is going to be the guy to stop Arnold Allen here. Dan Hooker, he's one of everybody's favorites. He jumps in against everybody. He's really a gangster. He's not shy when it comes to fighting anybody. But Arnold Allen is just so skilled. These are both going to be two stand-up types of guys. They're both big-time kickboxers. But I think that like one thing that it really comes down to is that Dan Hooker doesn't really have the head movement to avoid the type of barrage of strikes that Arnold Allen is going to come at him with. And I don't think he's going to get knocked out. The only guys that have really knocked out Dan Hooker are guys with immense, crazy power. And Arnold Allen is winning a lot of his fights by decision. I just don't think that he's going to drop Dan Hooker. I think that this is going to be a really tight decision over 3 rounds. It's a really tough fight to pick, but I'm going with Arnold Allen just to eke it out like ever so slightly by decision. I think that there's a potential for, and I've heard some other people saying this, but potential for bias by the judges because they are going to be in the United Kingdom and Arnold Allen is the hometown guy. So I definitely think that he's going to eke it out by like a close decision in this one. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, right as you were saying, I remember where the fight is. Like I was formulating in my brain what I was going to say to raise that exact point. This is something that, similar to what we were talking about before, where the UFC has a vested interest in who wins over Paddy Pimblett. And the judges they're not a central group like referees are for the NFL. The judges are from the athletic commission from wherever the fight is put on. So that goes for the referees. It goes for the judges. Remember a couple cards ago where we had that referee that just refused to step in for a fight and just was watching a fighter get pounced over and over and over again. We went on Men of Order to talk about it, but the interesting thing is that these judges aren't a central isolated group. It's a bunch of guys who in a lot of cases are boxing judges. So I think that in this fight, it's going to be boxing. And I think, even if it's unintentional bias, I think they're still going to, everyone kind of want to roots for the home team guy if that's, where you're from. So I think that may have a part to play in this equation. And ultimately you have Dan Hooker, who's going to be his first time back down at 45 in a long time. Today is Tuesday. I heard he clocked in at about 162 pounds, right? So that's a 17-pound weight cut he has to do in 1, 2, 3 days, 3 mornings, less than that probably. So I think there was another picture of him recently where he didn't look great. He didn't look great. What does that actually mean? I don't know. But if he is able to make the weight, he's going to be 6 foot coming in against a guy in Arnold Allen who's 5'8". Dan Hooker is going to enjoy a 5.5-inch reach advantage for a fight that we're all expecting to be kickboxing. Now, the other thing you have to remember with Arnold Allen, he trains at TriStar Gym, right? So that means he's with Faraz Zahabi. He's with George St. Pierre. These are all equations. I think it's a very, very good matchup. I don't think it's a favorable matchup for either guy. I think the favorable aspect of this comes from it being in the UK, having a UK fighter, in the co-main event here. I think Arnold Allen, his dad does steroids, but he doesn't. I think Arnold Allen is gonna win this one.
Yeah, it's just so tough. I don't want to see Dan Hooker lose. I don't know if he dropped down to featherweight to like avoid, some of the competition that was coming his way in the lightweight division, but that weight cut is going to be tough for him. And, it looked easy the first time, but due to 17-pound weight cut with 3 days to go, that's just bizarre. So now, it's not that bizarre. There are some guys that do that on the regular, but it's got to be tough for Dan Hooker, who was fighting at lightweight for a very long time. So now we've got Alexander Volkov versus Tom Aspinall, the main event. This is one I've been looking forward to for a while, because I think Tom Aspinall is another one of those guys that a lot of people think that he has the potential to be a future champion of this heavyweight division. He does have heavy hands. He's, on a crazy win streak. He's not really fighting the same level of competition that Alexander Volkov has throughout his career. Like, dude, Volkov has fought some of the best. He just fought, was it Cyril Gane was his last fight, or he had one in between there?
Marcin Tybura is a unanimous decision win.
And Marcin Tybura is nobody to scoff at. He has a win over Alistair Overeem, basically retired Overeem. Walt Harris, good win. Walt Harris is Walt Harris. Lost to Curtis Blades, win over Greg Hardy, lost to Derek Lewis. And then Tom Aspinall, his competition isn't as comparable, but he does look really good. And, this is definitely going to be more of a stand-up match. I just think that the youth that Tom Aspinall has, and, fighting that lesser competition here, taking less damage to his chin, not as many wars as Volkov has had. I think that that's all going to pay off for him, and he's going to be able to withstand, a little bit more of Volkov's barrage that he doesn't like go crazy or anything. He maintains distance. Volkov maintains distance very well. But I do think that you're going to see a point in this fight when Tom Aspinall gets a little wild, rushes in, and potentially lands one on Volkov that he maybe doesn't put him out, but definitely drops him. Volkov doesn't really have a history of being knocked out by guys. This is another tough fight. It's minus 120 for Volkov, plus 100 for Aspinall. But I'm going with the underdog money here, ultimately, the hometown guy with Tom Aspinall. I'm one of those people that's hot on him and thinks that he could end up taking over this division at some point. So maybe Volkov is the stepping stone that he needs to start fighting that high level competition. I'm going with Tom. What do you got, Tom?
Whoa, a lot of Toms. Listen, yeah, I'm also going with Tom Aspinall. And the reason is because when you look at the competition for Alexander Volkov, it's actually, in my opinion, not as impressive as one would expect. He has a win over Marcin Tybura, right? But looking at Marcin Tybura's background, the loss to Volkov, he beat Walt Harris, and Walt Harris is on the edge of not being in the UFC anymore. He beat Greg Hardy, who's on the edge of, or isn't in the UFC anymore. Ben Rothwell, who basically isn't in the UFC anymore. Maxim Grisham, who isn't in the UFC anymore. And Sergey Spivak, granted that Sergey Spivak actually is on a little bit of a resurgence lately, but that was back in 2020. So looking back at Alexander Volkov, that Marcin Tybura win, being that Marcin Tybura hasn't faced that phenomenal competition, I don't know if I'm, ready to be all excited about Volkov because he beat Tybura. He lost the game, so clearly he is a step below the top of the division. And we're talking about Tom Aspinall as in that top echelon, right? The win over Alistair Overeem, great. He retired Overeem, but what came first, the chicken or the egg? And then he has another win over Walt Harris. Walt Harris, again, on his way out. There's a kick to the solar plexus. Alexander Volkov, then he has a loss to Curtis Blades, a win against Greg Hardy, a loss to Derek Lewis. There's a lot of times these fighters that can be on a 3-fight win streak, right? Or win 3 of their last 4. But when you actually look at it, those guys, while names, weren't names at the time that they actually fought them. And that's kind of what props up some of these guys. Not saying that Volkov isn't skilled or a high level guy, but when we're talking about high level versus high level, I think Tom Aspinall deserves to be in that upper echelon. He's on a 5-6, he's on a basically undefeated in MMA, undefeated in the UFC, comes in, beats Jake Collier, beats Alan Vedat. Then he has a win over Andrei Arlovsky, who we've seen have a really, really good transition into his elder years here in the UFC, which is not something you would think, you would say. He has 49 fights, 30-19. Andrei Arlovsky has a win via rear naked choke against him. And then Sergey Spivak, who we just saw knock out Greg Hardy. It's like a cycle of opponents here. But, I think Sergey Spivak is getting better. We got to remember he's a young guy. And he's, he has a win over Alexei Olenek and Jared Vandera. So and Carlos Felipe, who, was on a suspension for steroids. So he may have even beaten a steroided up Carlos Felipe. So push come to shove, I think Sergey Spivak is a decent win when it pertains to Tom Aspinall, and, maybe less of a decent win if it pertains to anyone else I'm making a case against. But I know it was a bit of a lengthy reasoning or discussion or one-way monologue, but I'm going with Tom Aspinall because I think the guys he's beaten have been better at that point in their career than the guys that Alexander Volkov has beaten at that point in their career. Furthermore, Volkov really enjoys the reach advantage, which is only going to be 3 inches here. He's only 2 or 3 inches taller than Tom Aspinall. Aspinall's a big dude, right? He has the ability to grapple with you, he has the ability to strike with you, he has the ability to push you up against the cage. I don't think there's a single area in this fight where Volkov is going to have the advantage other than God-given talent, which is at this point only reach for him.
Well said. So I assume you're going with Tom Aspinall here.
Yep, I'm going with Tom Aspinall. Do I want Tom Aspinall? I'm going with Tom Aspinall by a finish too.
Wow. Okay, that's going to be big money because you incorporate the fact that he's the underdog here. Plus, you think it's going to be a knockout, or obviously, right? You don't think he's going to do it by submission?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a submission. I think it's going to be a TKO situation. You got to remember, Tom Aspinall is coming into this, with the UK on his back in the main event. I have him a lot of time, even money. Minus 120 on DraftKings, Caesars minus 120, minus 110 on FanDuel, so almost even money. But yeah, I think Tom Aspinall by finish is a good bet for this one.
Oh, well, I'm with you on that. So I think this has been a great episode so far. We'll do what we always do and run down our picks one more time for all the people at home that have stuck around this far for the UFC UK card. So I've got Muhammad Mokaev, potentially by submission, Jack Shore, money line, sprinkle a little bit on Paul Craig's money line. And then for the main card, I've got Ilya Taporia, Luana Carolina, Gunnar Nelson, potentially by submission, also fight not to go the distance, Paddy Pimblett by submission, hopefully just, maybe a double chance, Paddy Pimblett by submission or KO, TKO. And then I've got Arnold Allen, money line, and I've got Tom Aspinall, money line, but also I do like that Tom Aspinall by knockout pick that Tom just presented. So, Tom, what do you got?
I got Sergey Pavlovich. I got that by finish, first or second round knockout. I like Ilya Taporia, but I sprinkle a little on Jai Herbert, man, because I'm just nervous because I'm just nervous because Ilya Taporia is getting into a lot of things that would statistically align with him being upset, thinking about guys other than the competition right in front of him, being, a weight class up after having weight issues, a weight class down, originally being 135. That's what I meant. He started at 135, not in the UFC, but outside the UFC, he was 135. Now he's at 145, or he was traditionally at 145, struggle making weight. Now he's at 155 to take on Jai Herbert. He's not traditionally that big, but I would stay away from that one unless you're going to bet some underdog money on Jai Herbert. I'm taking Luana Carolina by decision over Molly McCann. Gunnar Nelson by TKO over Takashi Sato. No, Gunnar Nelson by submission over Takashi Sato. I'm doing Paddy Pimlet over Rodrigo Vargas by finish. I'm doing Arnold Allen over Dan Hooker by decision. And I like Tom Aspinall over Alexander Volkov by finish, TKO particularly.
All right. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much on the same page for this one. I hope that we keep up this consistent level of success that we've had. But if we don't, just kidding, we will. So all you kind people at home that have been watching, if you've made it this far, please like the video, please subscribe, comment down below what you think. I almost want to turn this comment section into the new Tapology comment section. So let us know what you think. And thanks for sticking around. Have a good night. Tom, have a good night as well.
Mm-hmm.